Welcome everyone. Today's topic is all about the toilet, the last major component missing in the bathroom of this tiny houseboat. And let me tell you, it's a huge topic. It's almost overwhelming. There are just so many different options out there. One very common solution that you would find in most RVs is the gravity-fed RV toilet, which basically you have a toilet very similar to the one in your house, and it's hooked up to a big black water tank. Now that option is not really feasible in my case, because I just don't want to deal with raw sewage in a black water tank, and I don't want to waste my already limited water supply to flush the toilet. Besides all of that, I also don't want to sacrifice the space for a black water tank. Now, in order to break this down a little bit, let's take a brief look at some other popular solutions.
Number 1. Cassette toilets.
A cassette toilet is a permanent toilet with a portable black tank. This one is very common in Europe, but you can find them in North America as well. And there are models out there where the entire unit is portable, often referred to as portable camping toilet, but it's essentially the same concept.
Number 2. Dry flush toilets.
As the name suggests, a dry flush toilet doesn't use any water, and instead it wraps the waste for you and seals it conveniently in a plastic bag.
Number 3. Incinerator toilets.
These type of toilets are also waterless, and they literally incinerate your waste until there's just a handful of ashes left.
Number 4. Composting toilets.
Composting toilets are waterless, and they separate the liquids from the solids. The solids are usually mixed with some kind of composting medium like peat moss or sawdust. There's even more out there, but those are the main types I would say, and I want to keep the list short. Now it's time for some decisions. Let's try to narrow this down a bit. As some of you may remember, I used to live in a motorhome for a certain time period of my life, and I had one of those cassette toilets, and that thing was absolutely disgusting. I mean, if you think about it, you're dealing with a tiny portable version of a black water tank full of raw sewage, and it has to be emptied quite frequently. And also at times you really have to live with a disgusting smell in the bathroom, and that's just something I never want to deal with again in my life, so that option is out. As much as I love how easy and clean those dry flush toilets are, they're not only expensive to start with, but also expensive in the long run, since you have to purchase those plastic bag refill cartridges after only 15 flushes, and boy, those cartridges are expensive. So unfortunately, that one is a no too. Unless you're planning on installing a nuclear reactor in your rig, you can forget about an incinerator toilet, because those things take a ton of electricity. Besides that, from what I found online, they start at $5,000, and before I spend $5,000 on a throne, I would rather wear diapers for the rest of my life. Well, I guess that leaves us with the composting toilet. Now here are the things that I like about it. Despite what many people think, if they are properly managed, they don't smell. Also, there's no need for water. The black water tank becomes unnecessary and you don't have to deal with nasty sewage. Here's what I don't like. After spending a couple hours on Google, I realized that those units are surprisingly expensive at $1,000 and upwards. Seriously, $1,000 for a chunk of plastic with a toilet seat on it?
Yes.
Out of principle, I refuse to pay that, so here's what I'm going to use. To be honest with you, that would be already good enough for me, but if I present that to my wife, then I will get a kick in the shin, so let's get to work and make this thing pretty and a bit more functional as well. To be honest, just a bucket wouldn't work very well. In order to prevent the really bad smells, the urine needs to be separated from the solids, and I'm trying to use a simple funnel for this. I just didn't have the right shape yet, so I used a heat gun to soften the plastic and to shape the funnel the way I wanted it, which worked really well. I had to cut out a slot in the bucket to give the funnel a way to exit, and then I just used some epoxy to attach a hose fitting. And now it was time to work on a housing. Alright, so I got a pretty housing for the bucket now. Even though I coated everything with polyurethane, those surfaces are still not the easiest to clean, so I thought why not using the leftover fiberglass panels from when I built the shower. That way it is super easy to wipe down and it's absolutely waterproof in case something leaks and gets spilled when it's time to empty the bucket. So I decided to cover all the crucial surfaces and then I started to assemble the lid. To give this a little bit more of an interesting look and to cover the edges, I decided to install the strip of aluminum which I bought in a bundle from the local scrapyard. I always keep an eye out for cheap material just to keep the cost down wherever I can. Speaking of saving money, ironically, I quite literally used money for the next step. I didn't have the right size washer on hand to install some handles, so I just used a couple 10-cent coins and drilled a hole in it. The alternative would have been to drive for 30 minutes somewhere, so this was actually faster and cheaper. To line the edges of the inside of the lid, I just used the plastic from a second bucket. The table saw made it quick and easy to cut it down to the shape that I wanted. Those buckets are made of high-density polyethylene, and one characteristic of that material is that nothing really sticks to it very well, which makes it very easy to clean and therefore perfect for this application here. In order for those kind of toilets to work properly, we not only need the separation of the liquids, but also adequate ventilation. Now to keep the distance the air has to travel as short as possible, I'm going straight through the wall at the back here. Yet again, it paid off to always keep my eyes open for materials. I actually found this chunk of ABS pipe in a ditch and it had the perfect diameter for this job. Alright, well, the toilet is done. It's time now to explain how it's supposed to work. Well, let's take a look under the hood. As you can see here, we have the funnel area for number 1, and the rest here gives you room for number 2. The bucket is lined with a garbage bag, which will make it easy to empty once it's full. The little opening here is the edge of the exhaust pipe. To access the inside, you simply lift the lid and make sure you lock it in place with this little arm, just so you have both hands free to work in here. The entire unit is removable. All you have to do is disconnect the quick connector for the urine hose and pull back the exhaust pipe about half an inch to disconnect from the seal at the 12-volt fan. Now grab the handles and pull up the toilet a couple of an inch, and you will be able to move it temporarily wherever you want. This not only makes it easy to get to the fan if I have to, but more importantly, it also allows me access to the hatch on the floor. To allow for a big enough container and a proper drain angle, the urine container is located outside below floor level. This position will also make it a little bit easier to empty in the future. Now, once you're done with your business, you can engage the 12-volt fan for ventilation with this timer switch. It will shut off automatically after whatever time you choose. The countdown can be set from 1 minute up to 30 minutes. So it turns out I just spent $120 on this toilet. I got $5 for the funnel, about $20 for some stainless steel hose clamps, some hose fittings and the quick connector. About $40 for the timer switch, that one was a bit expensive. About $10 for wire, $25 for the toilet seat, $10 for the stainless steel piano hinge at the back, and $10 for the 12-volt fan. Now everything else I had already kicking around, and $120 sounds a lot better to me than $1,000. And besides that, I think it looks better too, and it fits the style of the bathroom. Now, is this actually a composting toilet? My answer to that is a clear no, and neither are any of those so-called composting toilets that you can buy for camper or RV life. The term composting toilet is highly misleading in this context and is the result of marketing. By the time you have to empty your container, which is after 3 to 4 weeks, and that of course depends how often you use your toilet, all you will end up is a pile of shit mixed with toilet paper and whatever medium you choose to mix in. At the very best, you might be able to start the composting process, but you will be very far away from using it as finished compost. In order to compost something properly, you need the right balance between carbon and nitrogen, you need the right temperature, and you need to give it enough time. It can take many months under perfect conditions, if not years, to completely compost a pile of human waste. So if you think that you can take your bucket full of shit after 3 weeks and happily plant your carrots in there, you might be in for a surprise. Now that this is out of the way, let's get back to our separating toilet. I still need a container for the medium, so let's wrap this up. I'm super happy with how this turned out. Of course, I can't tell you yet how well it will work, but I'm quite confident there are literally hundreds of people on YouTube who successfully build toilets with the same basic functions. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you want to support this channel, please consider subscribing. Also, huge thanks to my friends Sandro and Lisa in Germany. I tortured them with endless questions because they have long-term experience with an off-grid toilet. Anyways, that's it for this time. Take care, guys, and I will see you the next time.